Great. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. So you guys have two presentations back to back with two Stephanies. I love it. All right. Okay. So let me just adjust something here and I'll put it into presentation mode. Can you guys confirm everything is okay? You can see everything?
Everything is perfect.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, I am so excited to be here another year to support financial literacy and help you increase your wealth. And I know that you're here today because you know that knowledge is power. Am I right? Okay, so let's get started. Let's see here. In the next 15 minutes, I want you to have a better understanding of thematic investing and in particular, thematic ETFs. And if you decide that this is something that you want to include in your portfolio, hopefully the content that I present here today will help you in achieving that. Now, before we jump into the agenda, I actually created a quick poll aside. I don't want to have to go back to the screen share outside of the screen share because it takes me a little while. But I would love for you to actually just complete it because I want to know how many of you are currently investing in thematic ETFs. So go ahead and answer the poll and I will stop the screen share at the end of the presentation and we will check it out. Okay. So let's, I promise that I'm going to make this, as much fun as possible and help you learn along the way because I don't want to have a boring lecture up here. So what I want for you to achieve today is I want you to walk away knowing what a thematic ETF is and how to spot them. And just because they exist doesn't mean, is it a good investment? Okay. So I'm not biased with any company. I'm not selling any products up here today. So we are going to get in the good, bad, and ugly. And finally, if you think this is an area that you're interested in, we're going to talk about what you should look for before buying. Okay. So first, just quickly, who am I? My name is Stephanie Wolfe. I'm an accredited financial counselor of Canada. My background is unique in that I spent 15 years of my career launching and marketing products that were sold to investors and traded on the stock exchange. But now today, my mission is really, through all those years of experience, to help women just like you build their confidence with money and create financial independence to live the life of your dreams. Now, I show my clients how to set up effective cash flow systems, set their financial goals, and really learn to invest. So join me on social media. You can find me. I've got my handles at the bottom. I don't know if you can, I'll have to move my face here. I don't know where to put this, maybe at the top. At Wolfe Collective Wealth, you can join the party there. I would love to see you. Okay, so moving along. I've got some issues here. Okay, so what are thematic ETFs? Okay. Now, many of you are obviously familiar with exchange traded funds, ETFs, and how they work. And so just quickly, in case this is new to you, the industry standard ETF will replicate a specific weighted index of stocks, okay? That's the most basic explanation I can give. And the thematic investing is an approach which focuses on predicted long-term trends rather than specific companies or sectors. So within a thematic ETF, it's going to buy whatever stock is in the specific trend or theme that it's focused on, and then weight it according to the portfolio. Okay. So in other words, by buying one share of the ETF, you're going to buy exposure to an entire theme of a narrow diversification across the companies that are in there. Okay, so I've got some pictures on here because, like I said, I didn't want to be biased and put any specific companies, but there's some really popular trends right now happening in the thematic ETF space. So we're seeing Bitcoin and crypto. That's huge. It's exploded in the last I would say 2 years. Disruptive technologies like genome sequencing and medical devices. There's space exploration and cybersecurity. And actually, this is really cool. I will name drop one company. There's a new thematic ETF launching like every week, but Evolve ETFs recently announced that they filed a preliminary prospectus for Canada's first metaverse ETF, right? So all super exciting topics. It's easy to get swept away, but I'm going to keep it real here. Okay. We're going to talk about what you need to think about. So why should you consider a thematic ETF? Okay. So there's a few advantages. The first is that, like I said, you're going to get quick exposure to a theme. of narrow diversification across all those companies in there. And if you're the difference between going with an ETF versus selecting individual stocks that might be in a thematic ETF is that you're not going to have to do as much research because you're only going to have to look at the one ETF as opposed to the entire, like all the different stocks that you'd be selecting. So it makes it a lot easier. They overall, I would say there's a lower expense compared to building a portfolio on your own, because of course it's only going to be one ticket, one or two ETFs that you're purchasing as opposed to different companies. And it can be fun. Like, look how much fun they're having in this picture here. It's a good time, right? Okay, but not all fun and games. When you are investing for the future, there are some very serious things that you need to consider. Okay, you need to be mindful of the expense that it costs, right? You're going to be paying more for a thematic ETF over a traditional ETF, just because there is more research that needs to go into selecting these companies that are being held within that ETF. The fund, so the thing with trends and themes is that it can be volatile, right? So the fund can be really hit hard if the sector or investors decide that they're just not interested or it's not going to work. So there's a little bit of risk there. And of course, it's not as diversified. So there's also risk just in the fact that you're so concentrated. So that's overall, I would say, probably the things to be mindful of, as you consider thematic ETFs. So should you consider a thematic ETF in your portfolio? Is it a good investment? Okay. So, portfolio diversification, it's a good thing. I'm sure you guys have talked about it here in the last couple of days. And I would just say, it is easy to get carried away with some of these trends. They're very sexy and they have good marketing appeal. So I've got a couple of examples here that I wanted to just go through. The first one is esports and online gaming. I've got a teenage son, so I can tell you that I feel like this trend isn't going away anytime soon, but I mean, don't quote me, it's not financial advice, but he has played a lot of Fortnite over the years. Okay, so I've got some of the reasons here on the slide why perhaps this is a trend that's here to stay. We really saw it take off during 2019, 2020 because of all the lockdowns around the world. Major developments with the software and hardware. In fact, there was even just that movie that came out called Free Guy. I don't know if you've seen it, featuring Ryan Reynolds. But I mean, even when we're looking at sort of that learning AI that was in the video game, that he's in the movie. So the whole thing is just exploding, right? And it really has gone from non-mainstream to mainstream. So I've got this example here of a 2019 Fortnite tournament winner who really, I mean, he made more money than Tiger Woods, the PGA Masters winner. So interesting difference there in terms of monetization. Then we've also got, I thought it would be interesting to put the League of Legends in 2018. Now, I've never seen it. I just know that it's online video gaming and esports. And it's, it was a close second to the NFL Super Bowl. And we all know how much attraction the Super Bowl gets. So when we're taking a look at this particular theme, there is some potential, and these numbers, are telling a pretty compelling story. So this is a good example of a current online theme. Now, the next one that is very popular that I also think might be here for a while to stay is cybersecurity. I mean, it hardly feels like a hot trend because we basically live this every day now, especially over the last years. We've really adapted to an online living lifestyle, right? But this digitalization of our society means that, we have to be more cautious of viruses. We need to understand, how hacking can work. We have to be careful about, these attacks that can happen. But when you think about it, it really impacts every aspect of our lives. And so I've listed it down there, our homes and communities, everything that you do, everything you touch and see throughout the day really is impacted by cybersecurity. Right. So a really good example of what I've got here, and I wish you could see the top of my screen. I do apologize for this, but basically this just happened. There was between Twitter and Bitcoin, it was a hack, a cyber hack, a security hack. And so these, Twitter, I've got the examples. There was Joe Biden, Barack, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos. Basically, their Twitter accounts were hacked, and a very similar message was sent out. They were asking essentially for Bitcoin, sent to my address, and it will be doubled. So Twitter announced that the hack had targeted employees with access to internal systems and tools, which were then used to take control of these high-profile accounts. So that's how they did it. Now, so far, these hackers, who I believe have not yet been discovered, have been sent about the equivalent of 12 Bitcoins, which is close to almost $1 million, depending on the price of Bitcoin and where it's at today. So this is something that I think, we need to seriously be considering. It reminds me of what do you call I'm sure in the early days of the internet, we all received that Nigerian prince email, right? And a lot of these cyber scams or cyber hacks, most of them are financial extortion. So they've really come a long way. They've really improved their tactics much more than that Nigerian prince email that we all got, which I think is actually still floating around. So I can't even believe it's still out there. But okay, just because there's some solid themes that make a lot of sense when it comes to thematic investing. We all know that, some of these trends, not all of them last forever. I think we can all agree that MC Hammer's parachute pants can stay firmly in the past. They do not need to come back, right? Okay, so there's a saying, if you think that you are getting a greater return without any greater risk, you probably don't understand the actual risk that you're taking. So the majority of the most popular themes are really in early stage disruptive industries where the failure rates are extremely high. And that means that the downside for a theme that it's set up for success is extremely high too. So what I've got here, and I would actually just caution and say too, that you need to keep in mind that your long-term financial success, right? When you're deciding what you need to invest in or what you're interested in, you need to think about you and what your future looks like. So I've got this chart here, and it shows that around 40% of all thematic funds are closed after 10 years and more than half after 15 years. So because not all trends last forever. So I mean, if you're really going to be considering something for the long term, maybe thematic ETFs are not ideal, could be short-term plays in your portfolio. So just calling it out that the success rate hasn't been that encouraging, right? They are a bit riskier, and I think part of it is we all love a good story, right? And the opportunity to invest in all these sexy new, technologies and themes is a lot better and more exciting than, buying a boring utility company. So, you combine a really good story with an opportunity to make no-brainer money. And it's no wonder that the demand for these products has skyrocketed. So I wanted to pull this example here. This is where I wish you could see the top of my screen here. I don't know where to put my face. This is solar investments, okay? So solar energy. So it's interesting because the theme was right. Solar has, become very significant in the industry, but it didn't actually pan out as profits for the majority of investors. So I think this is a really good example. And it's not just solar. Thematic funds have on average underperformed buying and holding the US market over the long-term horizon. So there's a few reasons why, a good story may not make a good investment. I would say the first one is that you can see over here, it's not easy to accurately forecast what's going to happen in a particular theme, especially over a long-term horizon, right? Parachute pants excluded. Okay, we all know those should never have lasted, and they didn't. Second, most themes narrowly focus on one driver, and they assume that all others are going to remain constant, even though drivers never remain constant. So, for example, some macro drivers would be geopolitical variables or events that could happen that are unforeseen, could be fiscal policies, et cetera, that affect an economy. So those are some of those drivers that they don't always remain constant. Third is that good stories tend to lead to one-way thinking, So in other words, the more that you believe in a story, the more likely you are to dismiss the contradictory information, and you're going to overemphasize the importance of information that you agree with. This is otherwise known as cognitive investor bias. It happens to the best of us. So now that we've covered good, bad, and ugly of thematic ETFs, you are an informed and intelligent investor. So there are a few rules that you should use before you start to consider if this is something that you want to add to your portfolio. Okay. So I would say the first one is you need to assess, why do you want to invest in this particular theme? Okay. You have to really understand the space, I would say, and know, how is this theme going to generate returns? Is it going to be something that you think is viable for the long term? I mean, I did share with you a couple of examples where we looked at like cybersecurity, for example. Like I said, I'm no expert in determining the future, but cybersecurity is a part of our life. The fact that Evolve ETFs has filed this preliminary prospectus for the metaverse, which is essentially having the entire internet in our lives, I think there's something to be said for that particular trend or theme. So I would just say, consider, why are you interested in investing in this theme? Do you believe that it has long-term potential in the future? How is it going to generate returns? And then, can you handle the volatility? Because like I said, there is, because you're narrowing your diversification in this particular area, you're going to see more volatility overall. The last thing that I would say too is, will this ETF help me reach my investing goals? Okay. So taking a look at the big picture and your entire portfolio. And that comes back sort of to question one, which is, why do you want to invest in that theme? You got to know your risk tolerance profile as well, right? So this might be short-term play and not really for long-term investing. Okay. Next slide. Okay. So if you do decide that a thematic ETF is not worth it, you can invest in some of those companies yourself, right? They may be hailed as leaders of a theme, but be sure to do your due diligence, right? The market research is really important. You need to understand some of these fundamentals. I mean, who knows, you might uncover the next Apple or Google along the way. But if you'd like to leave it to a thematic ETF, you've got an advantage, right? Because you've got some pros here. So on the light purple side, I would say some of the pros to thematic ETF investing is that flexibility, right? You can easily just invest quickly in a theme and sell it, right? There's not a lot of long-term pressure there. Diversification in this basket of securities, so you're not just concentrated in that one or two companies. And it's easy, because like I said at the beginning, you don't have to do a whole lot of research. You still have to do your research on the actual ETF and who the provider is and the size of the fund, et cetera. But you don't have to buy those multiple stocks. And the fees. I actually have put this in here as a pro, because I do believe in the value of saving time. And so having somebody else do that research for you could potentially pay off. The cons to thematic ETFs, that's the dark purple side, higher risk, right? You need to be wary of the fact that you're going to be exposed to certain sector risks that you wouldn't see in a more broadly diversified ETF. Again, it comes with the volatility and attention. So you may have to, I'm a bit of a long-term investor person who believes you set it, forget it. No need to check in on your money every day. But when it comes to thematic investing, you might want to keep an eye on that trend and what's happening in the marketplace, and just keep up to speed with what's going on. So just remember, at the end of the day, not all thematic ETFs are created equal. So be sure to do your research. Okay. So that's it for me. I'm going to jump back. We're going to take a look at the polls, and I'll see if there's any questions coming in. So let's see. How can Musama, are you able to tell me what the polls look like? How can I get in there? Okay. Oh, here we go. We have a Q&A down here. Okay. So the first question is, what do you think about ARK ETFs and the disclosure that they do? So I actually am a big fan of Cathie Wood and ARK ETFs. That's the first question that's come in. And with regards to the disclosure, I think that they I mean, this is completely personal, a personal opinion, but I think they actually do a good job of releasing as much information as they can. They're in a very competitive space. And I think that Kathy Wood and her team have, they're quite vocal on some of the things that they're most interested in. I think it was only last year that they launched their space exploration ETF. And I think they've done a pretty decent job of their disclosure. But again, when you take a look at the ARC ETFs and that theme space that they've got, as Canadians, we also have to consider too buying in US dollar, in addition to the fact that it is also a higher MER that you're going to see on those ETFs. So a bit of a personal opinion there. Let's see. There is something in the chat here. Awesome. Okay. Yes. A lot of respect for her. Yes. An open process to research. So lots of great information. If if you're not familiar with ARC ETFs, I highly suggest you go check them out. And like I said, closer home to Canada, well, we have quite a few companies that are focused in different areas. I know Horizons ETFs, Evolves ETFs, they do have some thematic plays as well. So like I said, I can't actually see, I do apologize, I can't see the polling, so I don't know what the results are. So if the MC can help me out and let me know what the polls are, I'd love to do that before we wrap up today. Doesn't look like there's any more questions.
It seems as if no one has replied to the poll at this time.
Okay, that's fine. That's great. That's probably why I don't see it on here. So that would be something I would love to see in the replay. So if people could go ahead and do that, I think it would be good to have. So with no more questions, I will wrap it up. That's it for me. Thank you.